The 0.45.9 is currently the latest version of Modern Warships. This update brought a fairly huge change to the game as it included a lot of new things, from ships and weapons to graphics and gameplay. There are also things that has been adjusted to bring balance to the game and make them more useful. However, there's some parts of the update that caused the argument about whether the update made the game better or it made the game worse. We're all currently having different opinions on this new update. Hey everyone, just like the title says, I'll be reviewing the new update of Modern Warships. I'll be mentioning the major additions and changes that is implemented in this version of the game, and I'll be giving my thoughts on it. I wanted to share my thoughts about this new update of the game to show to all of you guys how great and poor some of the parts of it. So without further ado, let's begin. First, we'll be talking about the additions in this new update. The main highlight for additions is the new ships, RF Leader and USS Ohio. Both ships look very impressive, they're modeled pretty well and they're very close to their original appearances. Both ships are also good and effective in the battle, they have their own pros and cons. RF Leader has a very impressive speed and a great HP, but its maneuverability is very weak. Although it has the same amount of maneuverability as Zumwalt, but due to its displacement, it impacted a lot on its maneuverability. Ohio has 2 torpedoes and 5 missile slots, which makes Ohio as the submarine that has the most customizable missile slot in Tier 3, however, its HP is very low. As for the price, both have a reasonable price, but a lot didn't think of that when it comes to RF Leader due to its nerf. What a lot of people don't know is that it was nerfed in order to align on Tier 3 because this ship is supposedly a Tier 4 ship, but since Tier 4 isn't ready yet, it has to stay on Tier 3 and blend in as a Tier 3 ship. Also, the reason why the price isn't reduced despite the nerf is because of the fact that it's a Tier 4 ship. It is very unfair to buy a Tier 4 ship that will have its original strength once it is transferred to Tier 4 with a price of a regular Tier 3 ship. Now there's no confirmation from the devs whether this is the case for Leader, but I highly believe it is the case for Leader, because Leader is a Tier 4 ship, therefore it must have its original stats back once it is moved to Tier 4. There are 5 new weapons in this new update, namely, the Mark 48 torpedo, the Armat cannon, the S-500 Prometheus missile, the Trident II missile, and the Panzer air defense. All of these weapons have their own unique features that makes them better, which I find it really great. The 2 of the new weapons that I like the most is the Trident missile and the Panzer air defense. Panzer is currently the most unique air defense because it's a combination of CIWS and missile air defense. It's surprisingly quite effective, it worked very well in my battles. On the other hand, the Trident missile is the first missile in Modern Warships that introduced the ability of a missile to launch from underwater. Now because of that, submarines are now being used a lot, and if you're against a team full of submarines, they're much more likely to win, especially if you and your team are using ships with little or no anti-submarine weapons and has an insufficient amount of air defense, and this is causing an unbalanced gameplay. It would be better if the developer also limits the number of submarines per match, as there's no other way for non-ASW ships to do other than hiding when they're in that kind of a match. We're hoping to see an action for that matter, as we really can't enjoy the game if we always encounter that kind of a match. Next to the things that I'll talk about are the improved weapons and ships. First, I really liked the improvement of JS Karama. The addition of 1 more torpedo on Karama made the ship a nightmare for submarines. It is now one of the ships which submarines must not underestimate, especially if it is used by a high-level player. The RF Ulanovska received 2 missiles, but I still think it is still not enough to make the ship great in this current version. It has to have its fighter plane to really catch up with the other carriers in Tier 3. Ulanovska is a supercarrier for the Soviet Navy, so there's really no reason for this type of ship to not have a fighter plane. On this one, I'm not a big fan of RF Admiral Nakhimov, but this will definitely make Nakhimov users happy, as the RF Admiral Nakhimov received a speed buff that makes it much faster than his brother RF Pyotr Veliki. But despite that, Veliki remains worthy of being a premium ship, as it still has a lot of advantages which Admiral Nakhimov doesn't have. The USS Zumwalt's supposed to have 1 more missile, but it didn't last long because the developer decided to remove it during alpha test, so it went back to its original number. Before it was removed, I got the chance to use the ship, and it was indeed powerful. It felt so much like Veliki, and I think it was just a right decision for the developers to remove it. Hughes and Shikval are completely redesigned, and I think this is a really great improvement. Before this version, these torpedoes have to be manually aimed before it can be launched. It works similar to how a cannon works, so it was indeed a bit confusing to use and it was almost incapable. Now, it works exactly the same as the rest of the torpedoes in the game, but it fires only at a short range. Along with that, these torpedoes deal a lot of damage through their round of burst. Both have a round of burst of more than one torpedo, which means these torpedoes have the ability to launch 2 or more torpedoes. They have basically become the torpedo version of Swarmer. The Tomahawk missile now has the ability to launch from underwater. It has become the Trident missile in Tier 2. Now if you've noticed, there are a couple of things in this update that is for submarines, and that explains why it is being used a lot in this new version of the game. It's great that they enhanced this type of ship, but it is now causing an unbalanced gameplay even in Tier 2, and they really must do something about it. The legendary Monarch cannon finally got the amount of damage it deserves. The damage is increased to 16,000 and the reload time is reduced to 9 seconds. I'm very glad that this cannon got what it deserves, as this weapon was heavily nerfed when it came out, and the cannon was very unworthy to its title and price. The oxygen of submarines in Tier 3 were slightly exchanged for more HP, and the premium account in the daily rewards is now 24 hours instead of 4 hours. Those are the major additions and improvements in this new update. I would be able to say that the additions and improvements are good if it wasn't for some parts that caused an unbalanced gameplay. But if we exclude the problem, I could definitely say that it is very good. Next is the gameplay and graphics. I'll talk about the gameplay first. They've added a very cool map that has a tornado that could actually destroy aircrafts. They've added little helpful features on the weapon interface, and they've also redesigned some of its existing features in it too. It's all good. But what I don't like in this part is the part where you'll have the chance to upgrade your ammunition and replenish it once it runs out using the new ammo consumables. I liked the idea of having a chance to fight your opponents a little longer. However, what made me dislike the feature is that it worsened the situation of all slow ships. Slow ships can hardly survive at the beginning of a match due to their own gameplay issue. How much more now if the ships have more ammunition for their weapons, and they can even replenish it if they run out. It would have been a lot better if they did this after they have fixed the gameplay issue of slow ships. I might gonna make a video explaining this entire gameplay issue of slow ships. It is a major flaw of the game that have been existing since the very beginning of this game. It is something that must be recognized and resolved because it has a huge impact on the balance of the game. Another thing that I obviously disliked on this part is the unbalanced gameplay, which I've already mentioned and explained earlier. It was caused by the additions and improvements, but since it involves the gameplay, I decided to include it here as well. Next is the graphics. A lot of people also point out that the new and improved effects on this new version is not as good as before, but for me, I think the effects are outstanding. The only problem I have with it is the nuclear explosion, because it isn't very dramatic anymore, it feels very weak, and it fades too fast. I think that's only the part that I really don't like, and it is the only thing that made me prefer the old version than the latest version. But other than that, it is really outstanding and I really liked it. In this version, they've now added water effects for torpedoes whenever it is approaching. It looks very impressive. It makes the battle more intense and cooler, especially when there's a lot of torpedoes moving around, and it actually made torpedoes much easier to hit with our grenade launchers. They've also added ultra graphics in this new version. I can't say a lot about it yet, as I've never tried it long enough to be able to give a detailed opinion about it, because as soon as I turn it on, my device started lagging and it quickly heat up my phone. However, we can assume that it's super cool and it makes the game look more realistic than ever. If you have a phone with a wide screen, you will encounter this black gap. And this can look pretty bothering to some, but now, the developers adjusted the screen area and the game should now perfectly fit on your wide screen phone. However, it needs to be fixed because there's now more gap on that side than its opposite side, and it looks a bit weird. This one came a little bit late. The developers also made the camera of the game adjust for buildings and other obstacles. This means camera doesn't go past through the obstacles. This one has been annoying players since alpha test, and it was extremely annoying because every time the camera goes through to a building or obstacles, it resets the targeting system of all weapons in your ship, which will put you at a disadvantage in the battle. I'm very glad that they fixed it. Those are all the things I could say for the gameplay and graphics. I definitely have some problems with it, but there are some things in the update that kind of temporarily cover those problems for me, which I also appreciate a lot. So I can only say that the gameplay and graphics is a little okay. Overall, I think the huge update is fairly good. I have a mixed feelings on this new update because there are some things in the update that I can disagree, and some things that I can agree. But if we exclude the things that I didn't like, I might be able to say that the update is great because I really like and appreciate most of the things in this new update. Hopefully the developers will do something about those problems that I pointed out, as we're always looking forward to see more awesome things in this game. This is my review for the new 0.45.9 version of Modern Warships. Hopefully you guys liked this video. If you all did, please leave a like and subscribe to support me. Thank you so much for watching.